The followers of Muhammad, especially the Arabs, always bring up the Crusades as a reason why they hate the West and Christianity. What are the facts?
As usual with the followers of Muhammad, whether Arab or not, their ability to contort logic, history and reality is astounding, but not at all surprising. As clones of Muhammad and his Sunnah, they have no choice but to blame their victims for the very attributes and actions that Muhammad or his followers had every intention of perpetrating against them. We have demonstrated this in our chapters 152a and b, called Projective Identification, as well as in others. As you all already know, they assert that the holy scriptures of the Christians and Jews had been corrupted, and hence are not the original divine revelations, thus arrogating to the Quran and only to the Quran the concept of uncorruptibility. Of course, they do so based on nothing more than their own self-serving agenda, without a single shred of evidence to corroborate or substantiate such obscenities of illogic. That is why not any of them have dared to take up our universal challenges. They are the ones who claim that their belief system is the best and should be the only one on earth. They are the ones who cannot show a single verse in Muhammad's Quran that is practical and spiritual or original, besides the vile, hate-mongering, war-mongering, and racist ones that fill its chapters. They are the ones who put all the blame for their self-inflicted misfortunes upon all others without once looking at themselves in the mirror. They cannot do so because the reflection that they would get and see is too horrible to contemplate. It is hence much easier to blame the West, Christianity, the Jews, Hindus, Zionism, communism, etc., etc., without the need to produce any proof. As we read daily on YouTube and see in the news, Muhammad's followers, and especially the Arabs, are in total and perpetual denial of facts and or reality. They suffer from the blame others syndrome. They do the same to the Crusades. They conveniently overlook and ignore, I may add wisely, the following facts. It was Muhammad, after all, who unilaterally declared total and eternal war against all those who do not believe in Allah and in Muhammad as the messenger of Allah. It was Muhammad who split humanity between his followers, the so-called believers, and the remaining majority of so-called unbelievers. It is Muhammad's Quran that divides the earth between the territories of peace, Dar al-Islam, under Muhammadan Islam, and the territories of war, Dar al-Harb, of the unbelievers. It was Muhammad who first attacked the native Christian Arabs of the Arabian Peninsula, subjugated and humiliated them, even though it was the Christian king of Ethiopia who helped Muhammad's followers escaping alleged discrimination by the Quraysh. It was Muhammad who first attacked the Byzantine Christians, both Arab and Greek. It was the jihadi Arabs who took Jerusalem from the Christians and built their mosque upon the Temple Mount. It was the Arabs in their jihad who conquered, slaughtered, subjugated and enslaved Christians in Iraq, Syria, Palestine, Egypt, North Africa, Armenia, etc., etc. These people did not attack Muhammad nor the Peninsula Arabs, or had even known he existed before his hordes occupied their lands. It was the Muhammadan jihadi Arabs who converted the beautiful and magnificent cathedrals of the Christians into mosques. It was the jihadi Arabs who ruled the conquered Christians under the egregious discriminatory rules of the Charter of Umar. It was the jihadi Arabs and Muhammadans who plundered, enslaved, and humiliated the Christian pilgrims on their way to Jerusalem. It was the jihadi Arabs who were committing these deeds against the Christians and, of course, against all others, so-called unbelievers, for 350 years before the Christians decided that enough is enough. It is inconceivable for the Arabs to accept that the Christians had every right to take Jerusalem back, because under Muhammadan Islamic thought, any country conquered by the Muhammadans must remain forever Muslim. Their intellect cannot and will not comprehend or appreciate that subjugated peoples under the oppressive imperialism of Muhammadan Islam have the right to take back their freedom and lands from their Muhammadan occupiers. Since the time of the Emperor Constantine, Christians had gone on pilgrimages to the Holy Land. Even though Mohammedans had ruled Jerusalem since 638, Christians were still allowed to visit the city. By the 11th century, however, the situation had changed. Let me now recite to you how tolerant Mohammedan Muslims dealt with the Christians and Jews, the people of the book, in their own occupied lands. 1009. Khalifa al-Hakim ibn Amr Allah orders the Holy Sepulchre and all Christian buildings in Jerusalem be destroyed. 1012. Khalifa al-Hakim ibn Amr Allah orders the destruction of all Christian and Jewish houses of worship in his lands. 1012. Berber forces capture Cordova and order that half the population be executed. 1070. Seljuk Turks capture Jerusalem and begin persecuting Christian pilgrims. 1071 to 1085, Seljuk Turks conquer most of Syria and Palestine. 1078, Seljuk Turks capture Nicaea. Just as the number and frequency of pilgrimages to Jerusalem was at new peaks, the Seljuk Turks took over control of Jerusalem and prevented pilgrimages. Pope Urban II, 1088 to 1099, was responsible for assisting Emperor Alexis of Constantinople in launching the First Crusade. He made one of the most influential speeches in the Middle Ages, calling on Christian princes in Europe to go on a crusade to rescue the Holy Land from the Turks. In the speech given at the Council of Clermont in France on November 27, 1095, he combined the ideas of making a pilgrimage to the Holy Land with that of waging a holy war against infidels. This was to be the same type of holy war, jihad, as ordained by Muhammad's Quran and whose followers had been waging for the previous 350 years on 3 continents against millions of so-called unbelievers. There were 7 major crusades. The era of the crusades started in 1095 and ended in 1291 when Acre, the last of the Latin holdings in Palestine, was lost. During the conquest of Jerusalem, the Crusaders spent a whole day and night exterminating many of its civilians, as their chronicle attests. The Crusaders spent at least that night and the next day killing Muslims, including all of those in the Al-Aqsa Mosque, where Tancred's banner should have protected them. Not even women and children were spared. The city's Jews sought refuge in their synagogue, only to be burned alive within it by the Crusaders. The Europeans also destroyed the monuments to Orthodox Christian saints and the tomb of Abraham. Let us now reflect upon what I have recited, because the following items always escape the comprehension and mindset of the followers of Muhammad. Although the Crusaders fought under the sign of the cross, not a single one of them was actually a Christian. Not one of them, or any follower of Muhammad for that matter, can point out to a single verse in the New Testament that Jesus ordained upon his followers to wage holy war or to massacre anyone, civilians or otherwise. No such verse exists. The Crusaders slaughtered more Christians and Jews during the Crusades than they did the Mohammedans. In the Quran, on the other hand, Allah instructs his followers that the highest and best rewards, both in life and after death, are promised for those who slaughter the unbelievers for the sake of Allah, jihad fi sabilillah. The Quran and Hadith contain hundreds upon hundreds of such unholy and ungodly verses. The Crusades pale both in their achievements and the length of their existence compared to the Muhammadan slaughter perpetrated and continues to be perpetrated today against all so-called unbelieving kuffars, 80% of humanity, all Christians, Buddhists, Hindus, animists, Jews, as well as other sects of Muhammadan Islam. Only in Muhammad's Quran can anyone find such an obscene, alleged divine sanctification, but in no other belief system in human recorded history. Arab and Muhammadan hatred of the West and Christianity actually preceded the Crusades by 350 years. The Crusades are the red herring. Muhammad's Quran is the source and only source of this universal and unbridled hatred. We shall of course receive the usual disclaimers and misrepresentations, but we leave it to our listeners to evaluate the facts.